Hey Rachel, welcome to the space you're in.
Hello, Diana. I am so blessed to be in this space and so happy to see you.
So happy to see you too. I feel like we don't see each other enough. So let's just get right into it. Tell us who you are and how we met.
My name is Rachel Ruth Tate, and I am a professional Hellenistic astrologer. You and I met, what is this, 16 years ago? Am I dating myself?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And had a whirlwind conversation that led to a long-term friendship and all kinds of fun stuff in between. I feel like there have been many seasons between us and a whole iteration, a whole host of different vocations, but this is my end all be all right here.
Yeah, your soul found its home.
Hmm.
And yeah, so for those who are listening or watching, Rachel and I met when she was working at Equinox. And what's so funny is I went on a guest pass. It was the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers did like a week. And at the time I was working out like at a yoga studio, a boxing studio, like I had like a couple different memberships. And one of my friends had been like, "Oh, we should go to Equinox. There's these guest passes." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm never joining Equinox. It's such a fancy gym." Um, but I went. The friend just did the free pass and like never like actually joined. And then, I joined and I'm still a member over a decade later. So it's funny how that worked out.
That was very fun. I remember we corresponded via email,
Email,
and I fell in love with who you were by email. I'm like, who is this woman? She
the
sounds
energy.
phenomenal.
I know. And it was like
Oh,
before emojis were really a thing because I'm like corresponding by email. It's like I know that we were texting back then, but I feel like texts weren't what they are now. And so, because I feel like now that conversation would have happened by text and there have been emojis
right.
and, a whole thing. But yeah, so we met by email. We decided to meet in person. It was even more magical. Did we meet Andrew Bay when we were in person or did
Yes,
okay.
that very day. We
That's
met a
right.
third friend who we ended up forming this funny, unlikely trio at
Trio.
all
Three
kinds of
Stooges.
law and business or
Oh my
banking
God.
events throughout Dallas, Texas. So
Oh
we
my God.
formed a networking group.
Yeah.
It
Oh my
worked.
God.
It worked. It really
It
did.
did. It did. We
We were
had
successful.
so yeah, at that point in time, you were in sales for a gym, and then I would have been in law school.
Hmm.
And both of our paths have kind of, gone like this. And there have been men and, different things, but we both have, at this season of life, both kind of leaned into kind of what our hearts and souls had been kind of nudging at us the whole time. Maybe we just weren't listening. But do you want to talk about, well, do you want to talk about any relationships at all? Or what do you feel like talking about in terms of
Oh
your,
man, I feel like it's impossible for me to extricate like how we met from relationships from
Mm,
Equinox. It was actually Equinox that took me out to Los Angeles.
okay.
And it was I don't even know if you know this.
Okay.
I was denied a promotion at Equinox
Oh,
Preston Hollow, which is now closed, but I was denied a promotion to the AGM position for which I had been interviewing and which I had been essentially, for all intents and purposes, doing
hmm.
for months and months. But
Yeah.
what they didn't know when I was interviewing for the position in Dallas is that I had already been offered the position in Marina Del Rey.
Hmm.
So if I didn't get the promotion in Dallas, I was going to move. I did have to end a relationship to move, but
Oh,
that
right.
move is what took me into the very sort of American mecca of astrology and all alternative or healing arts. And that
Yeah.
was how everything started with the yoga, meditation, astrology, intuitive reading, all of that.
Well, and you said that you were denied a promotion, but it's like even as you're saying it, like what was, intuitively for me was like you were being guided. Like it wasn't like the promotion, it's like you can't ever be denied something that was never yours. It's like the promotion would have taken you away from the path that you were eventually supposed to, you know, end on. So you just, and a lot of times like we want something and we don't get it and we think it's a bad thing. And it's because we aren't in a position to see that there's something bigger and better for us behind, the other door that we weren't trying to open. So what
And
happened when you got to California?
Well, what you're speaking about is a huge principle of faith, right? That trust that where you're going and what you're guided towards, as well as what you're denied, that all
Right.
of that has purpose and meaning and richness that will perhaps not be evident until you look at it in hindsight with a better view. But
Right.
in general, Los Angeles was the for me the exercise and self definition outside of the place where I grew up.
Yeah.
So seeing the edges of myself, what's me and what's the city I'm in, or what's the social influences that are around me. And I really feel like Los Angeles unmade me,
Yeah.
if that makes
And just for the
sense.
benefit of the people who don't know you, so Dallas is where you were born and raised.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
how old were you when you moved to LA?
23.
Yeah. And so this time,
23.
new city, away from all things familiar.
Hmm. Knew
And
only a few folks, like no network, right? And then you kind of get to see where you gravitate towards and what gravitates towards you, as well as I got to question a lot of my norms, which is one of the most beautiful things about leaving the place that you came from, is that you can then notice, like, especially with Dallas, I got to Los Angeles and it became very clear to me that if I were to be having more than 3 to 4 drinks ever, people would wonder if everything was okay.
mm,
And that was a revelation for me coming from the capital of
foods.
pre-games and football and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We
But that
definitely have like a drinking culture. And I don't know how much of it is just being in your 20s, because we were both in our 20s when we met. But there's definitely like a normalized excessive drinking culture, even around people that are fit and active, like where it's
mhm.
like 2 drinks, 3 drinks, 4 drinks, have another, okay, one more. Um, and it's only like as I've gotten older and like kind of redefined my own relationship with alcohol that it's easy to notice how easily you can just kind of get swept up into the current that eventually becomes daily drinking. So,
And for the listeners too, you and I both went to Southern Methodist University, which is almost like a more extreme example of this Dallas generalization. It's what would happen if those same folks who enjoyed a brew or two all of a sudden were many multimillionaires and could enjoy many finer things in larger quantity.
yeah, no limits.
It was really no limits, and that was something I found in Los Angeles as well. But the no limits had a different connotation, and it was like maybe no limits to the business that you could make. I was there from 2014 to 2018, so it was right in the big, tech sort of time period. Silicon Beach and Snapchat was relocating to Venice, and there was a whole lot of energy in the air for growing things, but growing new things. And that was something that I found really thrilling and exciting. And it gave me also a permission to revise what I thought I wanted to do. I didn't have to be only a salesperson because
Right.
in LA, anything can happen. Like the limit is your imagination and the ability to convince other people that they should come with you, right? I
And
think Dallas is more and more that way too.
well, yeah, I think more and more I feel like it's about your circle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and in the last couple of years, like we've got Breathe Meditation and Wellness in Dallas now. There's O2. It's easier, I think, now than it was like 10, 15 years ago to find somewhere to go have a sound bath or something like that. So,
Can I thread a few things together real quick?
yeah, yeah.
So when I was leaving Los Angeles, I actually left very, very late 2017, like December of 2017. And I gave one last class at the Den Meditation in West Hollywood. And then I just literally hit the road, got to Dallas. So one of the students in class was a student of Chelsea Charbonneau, who is one of the owners of Breathe Meditation and Wellness. And this student called Chelsea, who was at the time a Lululemon ambassador. Breathe wasn't a thing yet, and
Mhm.
said, "Hey, you have to meet this girl, Rachel, meditation guide. She's, does chakra and psychic and some kind of more out there stuff than Dallas people. She's moving to Dallas, like she's heading towards you."
Mhm.
Chelsea had previously lived in LA. So that was my first collaborator, is the woman who now owns Breathe. And she invited me sight unseen to co-teach a class with her at Lulu North Park. That was the very first time that I got into Dallas yoga and meditation. So it's kind of beautiful to see how things have blossomed and how now there are so many like extensive resources like that. It's very cool.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned briefly that moving to LA meant ending a relationship and kind of going into the just the theme of exploring the difference between like what's really you and what's you in the setting that you're in exclusively. So just talk about that, like however you want to.
Interesting. So I got to Los Angeles, was super excited, and was promptly contacted by my first love.
Mhm.
I had met someone when I was 18, and I spent one semester at William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And he was my first boyfriend, first everything. And we broke up because of indefinite long distance. He's from New York, and he said, I will absolutely not move to Texas. Like, I just won't do it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to school and I don't know what I'm going to do after, but for the next 3.5 years, like, this is where I'm going to be. So when I moved to Los Angeles, same sweet man contacted me and said, hey, wouldn't move to Texas. I'll totally move to LA. Do you want to give it another shot? And so I did. And we were together for the entirety of the time that I was in Los Angeles.
Um,
Leaving LA meant breaking up with him.
oh no, I meant the boyfriend that you broke up with to move to LA. But
But I'm saying there was probably, honest to God, a 2 to 3 month span between the time one
oh,
ended and one started.
wow.
And it
But
was,
also very like serendipitous. It feels like little remnants of like a timeline needing to close, like, okay, like let's close with this one, close with this one, so that when the right person comes, there's going to be no lingering questions about what if that guy from 10 years ago, but anyway, keep going. It's yours.
right, right. No, for me, I have often felt the need to conform to the norms, not only of the city around me, but of the person to whom I want to give everything. But giving everything only works if everything's being given in both directions, or
Mhm.
else one of you is taking. And far fewer people than one might think actually want to give everything to a partner. I know a lot of successful marriages in which a lot of people are not giving everything to the other person just because that's not how that exchange is working. They have an agreement that doesn't include everything unconditionally.
And I
That's
also
my
don't think it's healthy to give everything. I think it sets up a dynamic that in the long term leads to resentment. But continue.
100%, 100%. But I've been working through being less of a people pleaser, more of a partner pleaser.
Mhm.
I think forever. I love having harmony in relationships. And you think if I can be someone who moderates and creates the harmony, then we're flowing, we're going.
Yeah.
And in truth, that's just one person doing a lot of work and somebody else, riding the wave that they're creating. So it was easy to see that in both circumstances when I left both times. And like you're saying, there's definitely a thread that pulls you through. And it was time. That second relationship was over. The first relationship was over when I moved to LA.
Mhm.
And I would
And
say
because of LA or because it was going to end anyway?
both,
Okay. Yeah. Because I feel
both.
like
And
I met you in that first relationship and it always seemed too small for you, like to me.
well, the fact that, like, how often did you hang out with him?
Maybe once or twice. I don't know.
Right. And you saw me a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that should tell you everything. It was the
Mhm.
same with my partner after that. And I've realized that one of the things that I think is juicy when getting into the right relationship is like there does need to be some overlap between interests and um like commitments or something. Like if I don't like your friends and you don't like my friends, what are we doing?
Well, and the thing that's interesting is if you weren't someone who had like a deep sense of spirituality and wasn't at all inclined to lean into it, I think you probably would have married the first guy because on paper it made sense. Like it wasn't like he was like violent or ugly,
No, great guy.
or, um, in terms of like energetic vibrational match, not that, but like there wasn't, like I said, I always looked at it thinking like it's like these shoes are too small for her, like she's a 7.5 and these are 6.5. She needs more space. But
I am a 7.5, by the way. You're
oh, you are.
right.
I didn't know that. Um, but yeah, I just think, having fast forward now, like I've been a divorce attorney, and I think there's a lot of emphasis on getting married. And I don't have a problem with that. Like, I personally want to be married, but not enough emphasis on finding a true, like, soul match. And I wish that there was more discussion on how to be awake enough and aware enough to find someone who's the right someone for you, instead of just checking boxes, which is what I think a lot of people do. And frankly, it's faster. It's easier to just check boxes and be like, okay, great, we're married now, let's have some babies. Than it is to say, like, okay, like, who am I? And like, what's my truth and what are my values? And I'm gonna wait until I find someone who matches that.
Right, because how can you actually know how to be happy in a relationship if you don't know yourself and how to be happy there?
Yeah.
Right. And I think it took coming back to Dallas and being alone for some years when I was starting my business, The Refuge, for me to actually get a better idea of what that meant.
Yeah.
And for your listeners, from 2018 to 2020 till March 15th of 2020, I had a meditation studio called The Refuge Meditation in Exposition Park. And today, I'm not making this up, this very day, I received a text from somebody who was telling me that they got the news about Pope Francis's passing, and they were wearing their squad shirt, their shirt from my studio. And for some reason, they connected it and it made them extremely grateful for the experience of my studio having been open. And they
Oh,
wanted to tell me that.
I love
So to know that that has an impact, you're like, all right, well, that was worth doing. And I think you can only get to that point, like you said, of soul understanding once you have gotten to that with yourself and what you like and what you're here for and what, why are you here?
it.
Because somebody
Exactly.
else they have to do that with you or alongside you or in support of you for it to work in any way. And I mean, someone has to be a big, big soul to hold space for someone like you or someone like me.
Absolutely. And the way I was explaining, I had a conversation with a stranger in the last week. And the way I explained it to them is, I was like, imagine if someone's never been to the city you grew up in and is trying to find your house. Like, they can eventually find your house if they ask enough of the right people. Like, they can eventually find it. But if they don't even know the address, like, it's going to take them a while. And it's the same thing in relationships. Like, if you don't know how to make yourself happy, like, if you don't know where that location is within you, it's going to be almost impossible to guide someone to it. And
Mm.
so people will say, like, oh, this job doesn't make me happy. My marriage doesn't make me happy. My kids don't make me happy. But it's like, you don't even know the address, babe. Like, you don't know the coordinates. Like, that is not on your marriage or your kids or your job. It's on you.
And I think we see that a lot. If I'm allowed to bring up a juicy topic,
Yes.
with both of the relationships that I ended, they
Mhm.
had been, and this is, 20s relationships, they'd been sexless for 6 months to a year when I was leaving.
Uh-huh.
And I think that it's when you come to a place where you don't even know how to enjoy yourself in partnership,
Mhm.
right? I broke up with them, but did I? If they were the ones who were not enjoying intimacy for that length of time, I feel like in this day and age, the younger people, I say younger people, the Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're having far fewer intimate relationships, but they're a lot more straightforward and honest about the ones they have,
Well,
which
and
I
when you
find
say it was
refreshing.
sexless, do you know if pornography was something that they were?
Phenomenal question. I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Because in the last, like, 5 years, I've had a relationship that was started where sex was a thing at the beginning. And for, not that it matters one way or another, but I am celibate now, but not a virgin, obviously. And
Mm-hmm.
so it started where sex was a thing in the beginning, and then sex just stopped being part of our dynamic. And it wasn't like a overnight thing. It was like a gradually just stopped happening. And in my case, I lived with the guy, and I walked in on him one time, which, side note, he was a sex addict, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Mm.
Or I just didn't believe it was the thing. I'm like, how can you really be addicted to that? No, no, you can be addicted to anything. But I walked, or I say I walked in, I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. He was in the living room, passed out on the couch, and um, his laptop was up and there was just all cam girls all over the screen. So it's like we weren't doing anything, but he was like spending, later discovered hundreds and thousands of dollars some months in chat rooms. So, you know, and there was one time where I like either he was like on the phone with some girl or something, and he'd accidentally hit speaker and I heard her voice. And he was like, you don't have anything to worry about. Like, you're who I'm committed to. Like, this is just, and I remember thinking, like, that's so bizarre. Like, why would you? He's like, this is just like, you're like my reality. Like, that they're not. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want someone who's got two worlds.
Virtual is reality. Yeah,
Mhm.
they are one and the same reality. And I think this story is all too common. I mean, my sister ended something with her recent serious partner of 3 years, also in their 20s.
Mhm.
And it ended because he was unfaithful to her. But this is after 6 months to a year of them not having intimate relations and her being the one rebuffed.
Mhm.
And I was kind of musing on this. I have a lot, and this is casual empiricism, a
Mhm.
lot of female friends who are in situations like that where the woman leaves because intimacy isn't something that's happening in the relationship, only to find out there is, a porn addiction, or there is another woman, or there is something else going on. But the weird part to me is, how do we get to such a point? What mental gymnastics do we have to do to continue to be in those relationships and call them happy or call
Well,
them functional?
I think being single, and I'm saying this as a like never married woman,
Mm-hmm.
requires a level of confidence that women are not groomed to have. Because like I have in the last couple of years put myself out there as somebody who gives advice that's of a caliber that I deserve to be paid for it. And the average person would look at me like someone who's never met me, right? Just on paper, be like, you're how old, never married? If you know so much, how come you're not married? Like there's this like suspicion, automatically for women who aren't married. Like something must be wrong with you. You must be defective. Otherwise, you'd be married. And what's interesting to me is like that analysis never looks at like the pool. Like it's never like, okay, well, what happened in the relationships that she did have? And like, you know, and to be fair, it's like the men I've dated in the last 10 years, um, with the exception of like two, like they're married now. So it's not like I was dating these like just deplorable like rejects of
Mm-hmm.
society. Like it just I knew my coordinates to happiness well enough to be like, this is not it for me. And
Mm-hmm.
there was one of them who I actually had told like a trusted older relative about. And in that relationship, like he cheated, multiple times. And I was telling them, and they were like, based on everything you're telling me, and this, of course, is someone who's older from another time,
Right.
we're like, you should marry him. And spoiler alert, we broke up in 2021. He's now married with two kids.
And
So,
people are allowed to want different things. I was watching this special with Netflix special by Chelsea Handler the other day, and
okay.
I think she's one of the best. She's one of the best icons of single female empowerment.
You think
Like,
so?
yeah,
Ugh, okay. I
I
have mixed
think,
reviews about her. But you go first.
I don't know her as a person, so this
Okay.
is discounting as in I'm talking about jokes she makes, not
Okay.
who she
Yeah.
is in real life. But she basically was saying that people people all want different things, and for you to say that you know what I want and what will make me happy, not only is that absurd, but also I'm really happy right over here doing my own thing. Like, I'm in a mansion, I'm on Netflix, I'm doing exactly what I've wanted to do. Like,
Yeah.
tell me I want kids, like, no way.
Yeah. And well, and I think people are allowed to want different things, but I think it's really interesting how if you're in certain spaces, like you can be demonized either way for saying that you want
Mm,
single. or for saying that you want to be married, for saying that you want kids or that you don't want kids. But the most attacked I have personally been online in the last year was on a Chelsea Handler post. So,
What?
yeah.
No way. Okay,
Yeah.
we will not bring up her name,
But
but
I,
I
so it's
know.
like, yeah, but it was me getting attacked for saying I want to be married with kids.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I also disagree with that. You're right, though. It's kind of like being a sexually active female in high school. Either you're a prude or you're a slut. I
Hmm.
mean, when I was in Los Angeles in my mid 20s, if I said, which I'm married now, I'm remarried, and I want to be married. I love being married,
Yeah.
and I that's what I maintained living in LA. And people said, "Oh my God, you no way! Like you are crazy. You're
Yep.
so young. You don't know what you want. You can't
Yep.
know what you want."
Yep.
Got back to Dallas, same situation. Everybody's like, "You poor darling. Why aren't you married? Where's your boyfriend? You know
Yep.
what? Doesn't Hey, I know plenty of men that would want to date you." And you're like, "Yeah, I
Yeah,
no,
and
I
both
got that."
extremes are problematic. Like, I do believe that everyone should can want what they want, but wanting what they want means when someone says what they want, the response is good for you. Not you
I
should
love that
want
for
that,
you.
or you should, like, yeah, amazing. If that is
Mhm.
your path, wonderful. But yeah, I think that in some spaces when you say that you want to be married, people project their own fears onto you. And so, like, there's a lot of people who will say, especially to younger girls, like, be independent, make sure you never need a man. And I'm like, I think better advice is this is how you find a man who is safe and dependable. But like, because they don't know how to tell you that, they say never need a man. I'm like, never need a man. Like, it sounds cute until you like roll the tape, like fast forward, like what do Christmases look like in your 80s? And like, is that really what you want? Like, do you want family holidays where you have no grandkids, no extended family networks, no, obviously girlfriends are great. Like, hello, like look at us right now. But it's like telling someone in their late teens and early 20s never need a man is so much less constructive, in my opinion, than saying, here's how to develop authentic happiness for yourself. Here's how to pick someone who's good for you. These are green flags that you should be checking for. Like that to me is just better advice, but because people don't want to do the work to cultivate a sense of wisdom, they just project fear. Don't have kids. I'm like, how about you talk about how to be a great parent? Like that to me is a much better conversation than don't have kids. Like
Well,
here's
now I think we get to attachment where people, in order for them to feel confident, to continue to feel confident, kind of like someone in their faith or their religion, you need the people around you to hold the same values that you do so that you can continue to be confident that you're doing the right thing the right way.
yeah, right. Instead of just owning your choice and saying everyone else can do what they want. Yeah.
Right. And it's that form of, I mean, why else would somebody, especially somebody who doesn't actually love you, right, isn't your family or a close friend, why would they be attached to the outcome of your life?
Right.
The only reason would be that whatever you're doing is challenging their identity.
Mhm.
And now I think we're getting to the core of the whole thing. Why did I go to LA? To challenge my identity.
Yeah.
Why did I leave LA? To challenge my identity.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's if we're not continually on that path towards self-actualization and actualization in relationships, then you're stagnant and you're not doing the living that you could be doing. Or like, what's the point of it? We're
Yeah.
not perfect. We're not gonna be, and so we're all working on it. But
It's called
working on it means working on you. I can't work on Diana, right? I can't work on somebody else. Like,
you can't drink the sparkling water in my straw. Like, mhm.
no, I can't. And right, if there are certain people, especially people we love, where if we could help them and like do the moves for them required, we would. You just can't.
Yeah.
So all you can do is hold space and love people where they're at, and
I
hopefully, it all the paths wind toward the divine future point,
I
right?
think also with the whole wanting to control or being attached to what people do, there's also a sense of like they're gonna be grateful, like almost wanting to get your hooks in and like now you're gonna owe me one because I helped you. Um, I can't remember. There's something that it's like a memory that's like percolating up, but um, I well, at different points in my life, have had people who, if I was really honest, like the relationship was more based on them needing me than about them wanting me. And both platonic friendships and romantic relationships, and even in some cases with family members. And I, in doing my own healing work, got to a place where I was like, okay, look, I don't want to have need-based relationships with anyone other than a child I have given birth to or legally adopted, and to a very, very small extent, my husband. That's it. And when I made that decision, I lost friends. And I say I lost friends. Let me read, because I believe in power of words. When I made that decision, unaligned relationships ended.
Right, because you can't control who's centering you. And
Mhm.
people center you when it's not appropriate. A lot
Yeah.
of times to avoid centering themselves because there's something they don't want to see or work on.
Mhm.
And I totally feel that where, you know, a lot of people will accept things they would never offer,
Yep.
especially when it comes to needs. But every anxious needs they're avoidant, right? Like there is codependence takes on so many forms. Especially women, we're taught like if you're needed, then you're important, then you're consequential, then you matter.
Yep.
And so it can take some really weird turns. And
There
I
is
agree with you.
a person on YouTube who I actually like a lot of what they say. Um, And I'm someone who, like, I don't need to agree with 100% of what you say to like you, but I agree with like 80 to 85% of what they say. But like the 10-15% I disagree with, I strongly disagree with, like
Mm,
vehemently.
mm-hmm.
And one of the things, it's a man, and in his advice to women about how to get any man you want, one of his things is make yourself useful to him, make yourself invaluable to him. And it's like, I can understand why a well-intentioned man would give that piece of advice. However, as a conscious person, I know that behaving in a way where your intention is to make yourself invaluable is going to set up a dynamic where you activate the predator inside of even the best of people. And when you do that, you start like a sequence of events, a domino that leads to you being discarded when you're no longer valuable, which, if you are like most people in that situation, makes you feel very insecure, because you either have to constantly manufacture situations that like engineer your need, or you just have to know that your days are numbered, which, how do you feel safe in either dynamic?
And you're making me think of something that I heard Michelle Obama say. I'm going to paraphrase her real quick,
Mhm.
but it's not always 50-50 in relationships, and
Oh
that's
God.
okay.
Oh,
She was
50-50.
talking about during his presidency, like of course it wasn't 50-50. Like she
Yeah.
was giving a lot more towards his cause, but that it will vacillate over time, and that couples who are in healthy communication will acknowledge when it's like, hey, we're leaning on me right now, we're leaning on you here. But for you to be invaluable to somebody and for them to always be leaning on you, setting up that resentment, like you said, imbalanced relationships always lead to resentment. And bitterness is not who people are. People are not bitter when they come out as a beautiful, joyful baby. Like bitterness is learned through unsatisfying experiences
And having your
on
heart
repeat.
broken. Well,
Yes.
you know, I hinted at this earlier. I'm like, I'll kind of say it now and then move on. So, in my worldview and what I teach, to have a healthy, juicy, satisfying romantic relationship, there needs to be energetic polarity. In order to create anything in this world, there's a masculine and energy, a masculine and feminine energy is needed. In the relationships, these energies exist in both people. So, all women, all men, we have both energies. Like if we didn't, like we wouldn't be able to function. But in a romantic relationship, there needs to be a feminine follower and a masculine leader for there to be polarity. And the problem is, in the world that we live in, the energy is predominantly masculine. And so when both partners are in their masculine, and it doesn't matter gay or straight, I feel like actually homosexual relationships, because people aren't hung up on gender, tend to be much better about finding the polarity and naturally.
Witnessing. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, like when people will ask gay guys, like, oh, which one's the wife? Like what they're really referring to is like, who is the energetic feminine, without knowing that that's what they're saying. But when both are the masculine, the way it manifests in a relationship is constant power struggles or really toxic fighting because both want to be the alpha, both want the control. So there's constant fighting over stupid shit. Um, Everything is a power struggle because the masculine energy wants to be preeminent in its reasoning. And so that's why there's fighting because like the masculine is the one whose thoughts matter more. The feminine is one whose feelings matter more. So the masculine surrenders to the feminine's feelings, the feminine surrenders to the masculine's thinking. So in that way, they're both leaders and they're both followers. There's a mutual surrender um, in a way that feels good and leads to deepening love over time. When both partners are in their feminine, what it leads to is a passionless marriage. So that like sexless dynamic and addictions are just like the shadow side of the dark feminine. So when you, or the shadow side of the feminine.
Oh, yes.
The feminine is
Yes.
about pleasure, you know, and so what is addiction? It's pleasure taken to the point where it's destructive. And so when you have that sexless marriage or relationship where one partner is, you know, satisfying their needs through an addiction, it means both are in their feminine. So when I talked about, you know, my relationship where the, you know, guy was like, no, you're my reality, you're who I care about, it's both of us in our feminine, which is why we're able to coexist. We didn't, well, he did have a temper, but he would always like kind of blow up and then be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like on his knees groveling, like I'm not worthy. Um, and so, but anyway, yeah. So like people, I think it's easier to think, oh, like all masculine bad, feminine good. And it's like, no, both are good. Both are needed for survival. Both are seen throughout creation. You can't make a baby without masculine and feminine. You need both. But in a relationship, if there's not a clear feminine follower and a clear masculine leader, there will be a clear hot mess for for a host of reasons that looks different depending on which energy is imbalanced. But I think
And
that not understanding that is also a big piece of why the divorce rate's climbing and only going to continue to climb because without energetic polarity, it quickly leads to a dynamic that's dissatisfying for both parties.
And we are wrapping back around to the astrology. One of the
Yeah,
best things about astrology is that everything comes in the polar, everything is a duad, everything has balance. It's all a spectrum, you know, between things, right? Like heat and coldness are actually the same thing, just in two
agrees.
deep extremes,
Yeah.
right? And the study of astrology helps us to make sense of our lived experience and to understand perhaps why we tend to do one thing, like, you know, to be in our masculine or to be combative or assertive, or by contrast, to be someone like me who tends to be flexible and be able to mold or evolve to fit their partner's
Mhm.
needs. And it's one of the reasons relationships, period, are one of the reasons that I took up the art, because it's very helpful to use neutral or relatively neutral language in order to understand how and why we do what we do and why we are how we are, what we like, and how to then create that common ground and find common ground. And I
Yeah.
wish we could have this conversation all day, but I will have to go here in a minute. I could
Okay.
legitimately talk about relationships, history, compatibility, astrology. Like I mean, we used to talk until way too late in
I know.
the
Okay,
night.
so for the benefit of people listening, can you just do like a 60-second what astrology is, what it isn't, because there's so many misconceptions. So just explain what it is, what it isn't, and also talk about how people can find you.
So, astrology is simply an advanced form of timekeeping. We keep the solar day, we keep the solar year, and there are additional bodies like the moon who have deep influence on the way that we experience the given moment, on the quality of time. Like the sun in the winter is very different than the sun in the summer. So is, you know, Mercury, Venus, Mars, they all pull on the moment and create a certain experience, right? That we all partake in collectively, but that interacts with our own nativity, with our own fingerprint from the moment we were born differently. So, super advanced timekeeping. If anyone wants to know more, they can go to rachelruthtate.com. I have private readings, and I also do have a membership where I give weekly and monthly horoscopes, as well as a private Discord where my community chats about astrology 24/7. And all that I'm dedicated to right now is that membership community and creating astrological content on the Astrology Roadshow, which is a free show that I do daily on TikTok and Instagram, also under Rachel Ruth Tate.
Thanks so much for sharing. Thanks so much for being, my guest and my friend. And yeah, just to reiterate what you said, it's advanced timekeeping. I think there's so many myths. And, I grew up and I consider myself a Christian. You grew up kind of more spiritual, the little bit of Judaism influence. But there's just a lot of people who think, oh, it's occult, it's this, it's that. And like I mean, there's quartz in your watch. Like that's a crystal. Like it's timekeeping. So
We do Easter after the spring pink moon, right? The first Sunday afterwards. Like we dictate in our religious timekeeping on a very doctrinal, dogmatic sense. Like that's how the wise men found Christ. I mean, it's a big, I could go into that for a
yeah,
while, but it is totally something that is entirely physical. You don't even have to get metaphysical.
yeah. Well, and even, I mean, the Bible like is an astrological text, talks about them following a star. And even in the book of Genesis, when it talks about creation, it talks about a big light to govern the day and a smaller light to govern the night. And, you know, um, if you are like me, Christian, your worldview is God's the creator. It's like all of these things have power. The source of the power is God. So it's not about worshiping the sun or the moon or whatever. But I think there's like a little bit of throwing out the baby with the bathwater in certain evangelical circles where it's like, well, if you believe in God, you can't believe in that. And there's no like, you can believe in God and also believe that God put different systems into place that impact beings on earth and beings in the heavens. And, it's all interplaying with it. Like, that's why I like the phrase infinite intelligence or quantum field a little bit more than God sometimes, because I feel like the term God is so limited in the way that people think of it. But when you use infinite intelligence or quantum field, like there's an idea that it's expansive, this power source that put things into play.
God
So
made the heavens and the earth,
yeah,
right? As above,
what does
so
that mean,
below. It's
people?
all, yeah, the
What
macro
force?
and micro are all one.
Yeah,
And so I appreciate you adding that bit on because I sometimes find pushback with that community, but really there is no conflict between astrology and Christianity and any other religion that people subscribe to or practice.
yes. If your faith involves acknowledging that there is stuff in the sky, then it
We're for
jives.
you.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time and your love and just you being a part of my life throughout the years. And I'm glad that we're able to do this today. So
Dana, you are the very best. I have admired you for so long, and I'm so glad to be here.
thank you. And that is it. Thanks for joining us on the space you're in.